Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Resist, the recent one from my friend David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin. And disclaimer that I got a review copy of this one. I enjoyed Resist a lot during the crowdfunding campaign. It's a solo-only game of sabotage and survival with cards, but how do I feel about the final release? Let's find out and get to the list. So my number 5 point is focused on the victory conditions and how you win the game, quote unquote win, because this is basically a rush for victory points. You're trying to get as many of these missions as you can, but at the end of any round, you can choose to stop and just count up your victory points. And then you compare your results of this little point value chart, and you see how well you did. And I don't know about you all, but for me, that's not that exciting. I never tend to like solo beat your own score games. But the reason this is still a pro is, first of all, this is actually a pretty interesting decision of when to stop, because often you'll have like sort of enough resources to maybe go for one more mission, but if you do and fail, it could be catastrophic. But also a super cool thing is that they decided to make this scenario book with over 10 scenarios, and each of these not only has special setup and even like other rules sometimes, but it has a very specific ending condition for each of them that is a win-loss condition. So if, like me, you don't love beat your own score, the game has totally got you covered, which is pretty cool, the variety they threw in. My number 4 is also a pro and still related to the missions. This is the mission and enemy mechanic. So each round you're going to attempt a different mission, and you'll have enemies that are face down. Some effects will flip them face up. And this, first of all, gives the game great variety because you only see half the missions in each game for each of the levels. So you have variety there. You have totally different enemies guarding each mission. So like the little puzzle of what is most important for you to take care of, which places are safest or most dangerous for you to go to, totally changes each time. And the enemies, especially themselves, have really interesting characteristics. Some of them will actually like stop you from destroying the mission, stop you from getting closer to accomplishing your victory conditions, but many of them are things you can ignore if you don't mind paying the price. Like these counter guerrillas will destroy civilians and they might cause you to lose the game. This spy master will gum up your deck with spies. This jailer, if you don't defeat them at all, nothing happens, but if you do defeat them, you get a new character. So you get the yummy decisions in how you deal with the enemies, and again, just great variety in how they match up with the missions and their special powers. But that does go into number 3, my only mix for the game, and this is really going to depend on your taste, which is that there is a lot of card draw randomness. You know, the enemies that are on the mission and are face down and you don't know about could be the literal worst ones for your current squad. You could draw too many spies from your deck at the wrong time and be unable to do much of anything. You could get like the exact wrong mix of missions, and like they could combine wrong with the enemies. Now, I'm calling this a mix. It really doesn't bother me because the entire game takes like 10 minutes to play. So if you get a little bit unlucky, you can just roll with it again. And I think it gives the game more of that great variety because, again, you don't know how all these things are going to combine with each other each time you play. But it will definitely frustrate some players, just the cards not being in their favor. But I haven't actually talked about the cards you play to do stuff on your turns yet, and those are going to be my last 2 points, both big pros. So the first one is the plan versus attack phases. So you'll have 5 cards in your hand, and you have to play them all out, but you can play some during the planning phase and some during the attacking phase. And most of them will have abilities that trigger in one or the other, or sometimes you have the option of both for these characters. And if you play abilities during the planning phase, it's before you've committed to a mission, but it's also before you've seen what all the enemies are. Whereas if you play cards during the attack phase, you're locked into a mission. You can't change, but you get to see all the enemies you're facing first. So you have kind of perfect information for what you need to defeat the mission in the attack phase, but you're also locked into what may be a losing situation. And that simple splits turn structure mechanic gives you a lot of great decisions in the game, because if you play things earlier, you're again locking yourself in, but you also might be giving yourself more information. Some of the powers will only work in certain phases. It's just really great. But even better than that, my number 1 thing about the game is the hidden versus revealed mechanic. It's the most clever thing here by far, I think. So every single one of your characters has 2 sides, whether they're staying hidden in their role as a Maquis resistance fighter, or whether they're like really going all out and revealing themselves and getting arrested or killed afterwards. So if you use them for their revealed side, because you pick one or the other whenever you play them, you get a generally much more powerful effect. You get more attack power to defeat the enemies in the mission, but then they're gone out of your deck. This is basically a reverse deck deck builder where you start with the strongest version of your deck you're going to have for the entire game, and you're slowly losing people to complete the missions you need to succeed. There are a few ways to get new people. There are a few ways to call the spies out of your deck, which are kind of gumming things up. But yeah, I just find this mechanic and like the tension of which thing to use so great, because sometimes you just need to go big and you need to like just destroy a lot of your people, but then your deck is weaker for it, and they have different abilities for each side, so it makes like the choices even more interesting and more tense. Just makes the game pretty amazing overall. So overall, it's hard not to recommend Resist to most people. If you like solo games, if you like interesting card management and card play, if you like really tense decisions, if you like fast playing games, all of these things are going to float your boat with Resist. The only things that might make me steer someone away from the game are if you really don't like card draw luck, because that's certainly present here, if you want a more epic experience, or if you want more than solo play. Although honestly, I've been playing this with my family and just taking turns in the solo play like I do with a lot of games, and it works great. So I think actually 2 or 3 player, if you just kind of twist the solo a bit, can work really well. And if you want to see the game in action, I'm going to link up to my original preview. It hasn't really changed at all since then, so that still applies and shows how the game works. Good gaming, everyone, and I'll see you at the next stop.